Ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the invitation to come along and speak to the seminar this morning, or this afternoon actually, as we are now. And I've been asked to talk about the employer's perspective on how education, training and innovation investment should be organised to benefit business and enterprise. So I suppose that we're all very well aware that the past few years have had unprecedented levels of challenge for all of society. So from a government point of view, we've been seeing challenges around the public finance problem and under the watchful eye of Europe and the international money markets. From a business point of view, business owners have seen downsizing and close down often of organisations under increased high cost pressure, lower demand and international competition. And from an individual citizen's point of view, we have people who are highly mortgaged and possibly were considering retirement who now see major drastic pressure put on jobs, income, pensions and so on. So this obviously leaves us with serious pressure at all parts within the society. The legitimacy of business has definitely fallen, and there's diminished trust within the business sector, and this has led sometimes to the implementation of policies that can undermine competitiveness and sap economic growth. And part of that is of business's own making, in terms of, you know, having a short-term focus on financial performance rather than necessarily having a long-term view of success. But it is essential that employers, government and civil society work together and pull together rather than pulling against each other if we're going to try and find our way out of this current situation. We are faced with nothing but hard choices, unfortunately, and we have to be very careful about the choices that we make from the point of view of trying to figure out what the best trade-offs are going to be, because obviously there will be trade-offs. If we're going to put resources towards one area, by logic, we're taking them from somewhere else, or we're putting less resources into another area. So we have to make those hard choices, being very mindful of the current and future challenges that we have, because obviously it will have an effect on the resources that we have available to us going forward. And there can be a perception that employers really have a kind of a utilitarian view on things, that if there isn't a kind of an economic return on investment, that we're not interested in getting involved. And that really isn't the case. And I suppose I want to maybe outline some of the areas that certainly sort of business and social investment interests are not only aligned but very strongly intertwined. So what does this mean for investment in education, in innovation and training? Well, Ireland's education system has been absolutely fundamental and had a key role in our economic transformation over the last 3 decades. We've seen it enable significant growth by preparing and giving us the skills and competencies that we need to equip the workforce and compete on a global level. It's been a key competitive advantage that's regularly commented by institutional investors as a place to invest in, because of the strength of our workforce and the educated workforce that it is. And similarly, they've given us a competitive edge within our own labour market and beyond, and this is something that we really have to be very, very proud of, but very mindful of as well. Because obviously as we continue into this extremely challenging time, the system is being called again, once again, to innovate and to meet the challenges and the needs of the labour market and the workforce that we have. IBEC and employers have always really emphasised this need for investment in education, because it's really something that has a really positive, productive investment goal, both for the economy's long-term performance but also for social cohesion. In a global economy where we have knowledge as a key competitive advantage and a key driver and a key asset, it requires improvement at all stages within the educational ecosystem. And we're very mindful of the cumulative nature of education. You know, having that absolute need for and hunger for education and interest in education over a lifelong learning pattern really starts in early childhood education, and we have to see that investment the whole way through the system. Business and higher education would definitely have a very shared objective about having individuals who are well-rounded, creative, adaptable, ethically minded citizens who have an appetite for learning. So together we definitely have that same goal, and it obviously requires things like addressing how subjects are taught, focusing on course curriculum, but success is really about how we can refocus on the needs of what we have today going forward and bringing those new methods and new ways of looking at things into the 21st century. It doesn't imply, I suppose, that education is going to be exempt from the consequences of the need for ongoing fiscal adjustment, but it definitely means that we need to avoid making damaging cuts to the education budgets and focusing on cost effectiveness. We need to get away from, I suppose, the rhetoric that all cuts are bad, as the prioritisation of spending needs to be very much a focus. We've had a couple of mentions about the Pisa results, and I suppose if we look at the annual expenditure per student in Finland in 2008 was just under the equivalent of $9,000, and in Ireland the same time it was just under the equivalent of $11,000. So that's the annual expenditure per student. And yet if we glance at the OECD Pisa results, Finland has always been at that top, and we are now after finding a further decline. So, it does beg the question, why are we investing more and we're not reaching that quality level? What's the difference here? So clearly quality, access and outcomes have to matter, and not every cent in the education budget maybe is being spent to its optimum. So educational policy has to look at the ongoing requirements of the labour market, the ongoing training requirements of workers. This is particularly obviously challenging as across the globe the skills of what we're going to need in the next 10 years and the jobs of what we're going to see in the next 10 years are actually very difficult to forecast with any great accuracy. So now more than ever, as well as focusing on various specific skills, we need to have a focus on employability, on transferable generic skills, so that we're equipping students going forward with the skills that they're going to be able to cope with whatever that 10-year forecast looks like. Similarly, we have to look at education policy reforms, but also looking at teacher quality and teaching quality and the support that is provided to teachers in terms of continuous development, so that they're actually able to meet the needs demanded of these students of the future, to be able to actually educate them to meet those needs. Arguments that rage around ratios between teachers and class size and so on have mixed feelings in research in terms of, yes, very important at early childhood education, but the one thing that consistently comes through is about the quality. Quality is consistently seen as a necessity, and as a state we definitely have underinvested in teacher training and continuous professional development for teachers. So there's gaps remaining in the satisfactory nature of teacher training to cope with the level of change that teachers are being asked to deliver. The quality of an education system obviously can't exceed the quality of its teachers, and international evidence says empowering the teaching profession definitely produces good results. So teachers shouldn't be seen as technicians whose sole job is to literally implement and train in a strict syllabus, but rather seen as professionals who should be able to innovate and deliver on the needs of that changing education system. That obviously can't be done without giving them the tools and empowering them to actually deliver on that. Other reforms then obviously are necessary within the curriculum itself. We support things like changes in the junior cycle, lessening the number of subjects, for example, and having interdisciplinary teaching. There should also be an increased emphasis on science, technology, engineering and maths. And this has been a constant and often misunderstood demand by business, because we're not, for any sense of the way talking about devaluing arts, humanities, social sciences, they're hugely important and actually absolutely critical skills to how we interpret business and our interaction with the social environment. What we are saying though is that the STEM subjects are the areas that employers are telling us they have limited talent pools. It's a supply and demand issue. Another education area for reform is the lack of a consistent and coherent language policy. We need to be taking a lesson from our Nordic colleagues and having a very joined up multilingual policy on languages, so that it is perfectly normal and acceptable and expected to have 2 and more languages spoken and learned throughout the course of lifelong learning. With the labour force itself, obviously we've got jobs in sectors that are not going to recover from the recession. So we have a huge skills and training and education need within that cohort of people who are now finding themselves on the live register, if we're going to try and prevent them actually sort of finding a long-term unemployment problem within this cohort of people. Education and training supports have definitely had some successes in this area, and we've seen a government initiative this year in the form of Springboard, which looks at providing conversion courses and upskilling individuals who through recession found themselves on the unemployment register, who now need to look at what are they going to do differently. We've seen successes, for example, in the medical devices area, where employers have worked with skill nets and training providers to look at putting together a conversion course that's going to lead to an internship of experience that's going to lead to an actual job at the end of the process, converting those traditional engineering skills now into an area that's still growing, the biomedical, the pharma industries that are constantly recruiting and growing. Active employment policies then are obviously also a fundamental element in the restoration of the economy and trying to fight poverty and social exclusion. And we're finding that achieving these goals can be difficult because obviously individuals' distance from the labour market is making it more complex for them. The institutional reform in the social welfare system that we're going through or talking about going through at the moment, and the development of a one-stop shop where we have welfare payments and employment services all under the one roof in the National Employment and Entitlement Service, is likely to aid this process and be very much the glue within the system. And obviously it's based on a model that's prevalent and working very well in the Nordic system, where there's this joined-up approach to employment service with strict conditions around payments but very active interventions getting people back into the workforce. In terms of innovation then, it's widely recognised that while essential, reducing costs and preparing for the upturn in a global recovery won't alone return us to competitiveness and growth. And obviously innovation has been identified as one of the core competence or rather the core components in competitiveness. So restoring our organisations and our economies to success requires a strong innovation flavour. And Ireland has a stated ambition to be an innovation economy, to be a smart economy and an innovation hub. And definitely we have metrics that tell us we are a high-tech economy in terms of what we employ in the sector and what we export from a high-tech base. But becoming a smart economy is obviously a long-term strategy, and we've got to invest into that strategy. We've signed up to meeting the ambitious European goal of 3% of GDP, or 3% of GDP in terms of total R&D expenditure. But to achieve this, we've got to increase the R&D activity that we have within the economy. For this, it's not just investment that we need, but we need government policy to encourage that further. It's essential that we don't neglect productive investment. In terms of R&D spend, we lag significantly behind Nordic countries. And we've got to make a change in that if we're serious about these goals and our competitiveness going forward. And obviously, given the constraints on public expenditure, the objective is to identify areas where we can accelerate, deliver, and identify new areas of economic benefit. We also need to stay flexible because things are changing so fast. We have to have a policy that's not so set in stone that we can't move with what the areas might be for success for us going forward. Finally, and it's been mentioned, Ireland has been very successful on foreign direct investment in the past, and it continues to serve us well. But we're not getting the large number of jobs coming through that we did in the past. We're getting a smaller number of highly skilled jobs. So we need an alternative. And the development of a high-value, indigenous, innovative sector is really one of the biggest industrial challenges that we're facing. And this is an area that certainly our Nordic colleagues have been very successful at. So in conclusion, Ireland is going to have to perform a delicate balancing act to tackle all of these challenges at a time when we're seeing high unemployment rates, slow growth, increased demand for public services, long-term liabilities such as pensions. In terms of competitiveness, unlike, for example, Finland in the 1990s crisis, Ireland can't devalue. So we have to improve competitiveness through cost adjustment and growth. We have to prioritise the activities that are going to boost the long-term growth rate, including investing in human capital, innovation and the creation of a framework to restore that competitiveness. They have been testing times, but Ireland has come through quite well, and we have a very solid fundamental base to work from. We've an advanced infrastructure built over the last 15 years. Our dispute resolution bodies are integral. Our education system has enormous strengths, and we're making reforms where it's not working. We're tackling structural reform where necessary, and we're going after supports and bridging gaps to try and get the labour market back working hard. Employers, government and social society obviously share many of the same aims for Ireland, and in a time of recession, social policy really has to contribute to economic recovery. And we're concentrating on those inputs, but really have good examples now starting to come through of where this can work, and we're learning as we go. And obviously events like today and learning from our Nordic colleagues is certainly a really positive step. We're at a turning point. We have to use the opportunities that it provides going forward. Thank you.